Hey guys, thanks for checking out this video. Today I'll be stringing a Yonex VCore 98 2021 tennis racket and doing so with a Technofiber X1 biphase 17 gauge multi-filament string. So first of all, we'll have to cut these off since it's a brand new racket. And since it's a brand new racket, I had to go onto the website to get the stringing instructions from Yonex, basically just to know which grommets to skip and where to tie off. So I made a little post-it note here that I'll use as my guide as you string. So the first thing to do here is to mount this racket on this stringing machine. So just gotta make sure everything is centered. And just tighten things up there. And you don't want to get it too tight because you might cause a bit of a stretch or flex in the racket. And then once you get the first two center posts mounted, then you want to get the other ones sort of in line and just enough to touch. And then after you get it sort of where you want it, then you can sort of do a nice finger tighten for all sections. So not overly do it, but just so that the racket doesn't move around on you when you string. I usually just do a little check, so get a little bit of movement, but that's okay for me. All right, so I'll just get you to come around over here and we'll just set up our tension. So right now the request is to tension this at 52 point, and this could actually go up by 0.1 increments. We'll go to 52.5 there. So, and I've actually pre-cut my string, and so we'll just get this mounted here. So in terms of the stringing pattern, you'll know that you'll notice that this bottom sort of grommet guard has the sort of string cradle in the middle. So this is where you're going to be starting. Usually you'll see this on a 16 by 19 pattern, but on a, if you have a 18 by 20 for instance, typically you'll have the middle up top here, in which case then you'll have to start going from head to throat. So the way I do it is I typically start like this and then get them together so that we keep the string equal on both sides. Like that. And just make sure you watch for any potential kinks. So you can see it's starting to curl here a bit, so you just want to pull that and make sure that's, there we go. And just to make sure that we're in a good spot, I like to do a little pull and then just make sure that those two are equal, okay? Okay, so next comes the clamping. So you can see I lock the table here, and the first thing is to clamp down here. And what I do is I hold this up with my hand, and you can adjust this so that it's straight. And I hold here and I pull really hard, and what I do is I get a starting clamp. Here is my gamma starting clamp, and I just clamp it here. This is just more of a safety precaution, so that if this clamp isn't tight enough, this will prevent the string from getting shredded as you pull with the tensioner. So there we go. So that's one there, and now we start by tensioning. Okay, so after that's tensioned, you can see that this is held in place by that clamp, and now we use this clamp to come up here and hold that string in place. Now you can release that tension, and what we're going to do here is a 3 first, and then 4, and then 2, 2, 2, 2 until you're done, and then we tie off our mains. So I'll show you here with this first side anyway, how the stringing process goes. So you want to make sure this doesn't go over. You want to make sure it goes under, so that when you tension it, you're not tensioning on top of the frame. So bring this again, just make sure that those strings are straight. And again, we just pull tension on that, hold that, release the clamp. So start at the base and then release the jaws, and then clamp by the jaws first, and then the base, and then release. Okay, so these are the first three that are done, and you always want to try to clamp as close to the grommets as you can, just so you don't lose that bit of tension in the string, you know, as much as possible. The other thing I want to mention, I forgot to mention actually, is you want to try to keep your stringing consistent. So what I do here is I use the Diablo, and that's this thing here that you wrap around and then into the jaws that hold the string. You could just go straight to the jaws and do it that way, but then you lose, if you do, you know, part of the stringing job with this and then go on to this, and you lose a bit of that consistency. So I like to have a bit of extra length on the strings just to make sure I have that ability to use that Diablo. Okay, so now you see here that I have the starting clamp holding this string in place, and you've got the jaws here holding. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tension this. You're gonna see that even though I was holding this with my arm, I can't really get to that force of 52.5 because my grip strength isn't that strong. So you can see how much slack there is here with that starting clamp, right? So I take that off, and now with this, you just have to reposition the clamp up closer, and now we can start the normal stringing process. So we did 3 here, and now we're gonna go 4 here. And at this point, we'll just skip over, and then I'll show you when we get to the tying the mains. Okay? All right, we'll see you in a bit. And we will tension that. So at this point, so we skip 8, and then we're gonna have to tie at 7. So basically here, pretty soon we'll be tying, let me just count here to make sure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then that'll be 8 there. So now, if I can get you to come around here for the tying function. So over here, if you want to take a look at the screen, this has a knot function. And the knot function just adds 10% of tension so that when you're tying your knot, it will kind of keep a higher tension so that when you release the tying motion, then at least you're going to be around that original tension. So we'll set the knot, let's tension that. All right, take that off. Okay, so at this point here, we will tie the knot, and based on my notes, tie at number 7. So if you count the grommets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can sort of see it's a flared grommet, so it's going to be extra space. So we should be able to pass that string through there. And sometimes if it's difficult, you could just use some pliers to kind of help push it through. And what I'll do is I'll lock this so that it doesn't move on me. And then you just want to grab it as, you know, distal or far down as you can, and kind of just push it through. And there, I kind of feel a little bit of a give. And there you go. There's that end. I just take that and pull this through. Okay. So now the way I tie off my knots is called a Parnell knot. And what this does, and I'll show you, you go over the string that you were just, so first of all, I should say, you want to point this sort of towards the middle of the racket, and you know you have it in a good position. You want to go over that string, under that string, and then through that loop you just made, and now you have a nice little loop here, as you can see. So what I do now is for the Parnell knot, you go again over, under, and then through this loop that you just made. And I'll show you why I like it. It's because now you go like this, and now we're just going to tension this off, right? So I start off with a little bit of a hand tension, and then I use the starting clamp. So you saw my gamma starting clamp here earlier. I like it because it's got a bit of a smaller profile, but for tightening and tying and whatnot, I like to use my Babolat starting clamp. it's got a bit more of a wider grip to it, so I just feel like it's just got a more real estate, so to say, to hold onto the string. So first thing I do is I grab this and I pull up towards me, away from me, and towards me to cinch up that knot. Okay, so that's the first one. And then this is the string that was going through that loop that I just made. And now I just do that same thing again. Towards me, away from me, towards me, and I hold that tension, let go of the clamp. There we go, and that's it. And here's the reason why I like the Parnell knot, is because now when I cut the string, you can see it's neatly tucked in by the frame. And you don't have a string that's sort of sticking out this way, or like a starting knot that's pointed upwards. It's a nice neat look to it. All right, so that's about it. And I'll just finish off tying the other main and then we'll get on to the crosses. All right, thanks. All right, so now we're on to the crosses. So we finished the main strings, we're gonna start doing the cross strings. The cross strings take a little bit longer to do because you need to weave and you know, make sure you're getting in the right position, and it just gets tougher as you get lower down. You always want to start at the head for crosses and work your way down to the throat. So at this point, we start at the number 8 grommet. So remember that grommet that I skipped on the main side? This here, you can see, is grommet number 8, and it's got a string that's covering. So there's a couple ways that you can get around that to get the string through. First of all, I have this little tool called Pathfinder All. And what this does is, as you can see here, it's got a point to it. So you actually use this point to go through the grommet, just like this awl here, right? They both sort of look similar. But the difference with the Pathfinder awl is once you get through, then you slide this, and then you have a little tunnel for that string to go through. And that way, once you get the string through, you can just pull it out all together. I try not to use this just because there's a possibility of nicking the string with that. You know, obviously it's not a smooth transition from point to tunnel. So I try not to use it if at all possible. The other way you can do it is if you flatten out this string and then cut it to a point, sort of like a pencil point, then you should be able to stick that through. Problem with multi-filament strings is that they're fairly soft, so it works really well with polyester because they're very stiff and you can easily do that. But with multi-filaments, you lose that integrity, structural integrity to it, and sometimes you could just try to put it in and it just bends itself because it's so flimsy. But luckily, I did a little dry run, and this string does go through on its own, so we can just look for that number 8 grommet here and push it through. So we were lucky we were able to get that. So I just got to pull this through, and as it gets pulled through, make sure we have enough space on this side, and I use a starting clamp, the starting clamp method, to do my crosses. So the thing I do first is I make sure I have enough slack on the Diablo and enough string that makes it all the way through to here, and that gives me enough length. So I just hold that there, and I use my Babolat starting clamp, clamp it here, just kind of follow that line, and then just let that rest. So now we know we have enough length on here. So now comes the weaving. So the weaving, you have to just alternate over, under, over, under, over, under. And here we're going to start off over, because that's just the way the string came out. And then we're going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, and under. Okay? That goes through. And let me just make sure this can come through. And this might be where I'll have to possibly do that technique, but I might be able to make it work here if I go at the right angle. Or maybe not. Okay, so I could show you that technique here now. So if you want to have a close look here at the string, the first thing you want to do is flatten it out. So I use a starting clamp, and I use my Gamma starting clamp for that reason. So a couple pushes, you can see it flattens it out, right? Got a bit of a flat profile to it. And you want to cut off part of it so that it becomes a point, just like that. So you can see sort of a pencil point there. And now make sure we're on the right, over under, good. So this should be able to hopefully sneak through, and you can see right here, if you can take a look at the grommet here, you can see it coming right out. You can just push that through. Kind of makes a little spear for it, so to say. And so now that that's through, there's a couple ways that you can, let's make sure this is entangled underneath the turntable here. Let's pull it through. Okay. So what you want to do is just pull this, and so you don't want to pull it straight across the mains, because this is going to be where all that force is. And if you're going to start, pulling this thing through, you can start to get little creases, and that could, decrease the durability of your string, and more chance of breakage. So what you want to do is you want to bring it down and pull, down and pull, down and pull. That way you're kind of going at an angle. So just get that through. And the first thing you want to do is to make sure that you've strung it properly, that you weaved it properly, is basically these mains are going to be even, right? So if you're going over this first string, you should be going under the last string. And that's the first thing that you've done it potentially properly. The second thing you could do is just a quick finger check. So you could just sort of run your finger along that cross string, and you could just feel when that string stops, because that means you're going underneath the main. So, oh, I feel a stop, 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 stop. Perfect. So I've got that there. So I know that I've strung the first cross string, no problem. Second cross string here, now that there's no string covering this grommet, it's dead easy to go through. So again, if this one is going under, you want to make sure that this string is going to be going over here. So if I go over this first one, then go under, then that's going to be the same pattern as above. So you want to make sure you don't do that. So this one, you have to start under and then go over. And that's the other way you could check if you're stringing properly, is that if it's opposite of what's above. So here is under, we're going to be going over, then under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and then over. Okay, and I'm just going to pull this again. So I like to string a bit ahead, just because not only is it easier for placement of that the next cross string, but also you can check to make sure that you've strung it properly without having to do a whole lot of change. So now that we know that we're following this, exactly, so let's bring this up here. You can see that this is under, this is over, this is over, this is under. So you can see that we've done that pattern appropriately here. Now we can tension this first cross string. And the starting clamp here will hold that, tension first. And then what I do is just do a little finger pull to make sure that that's up and straight, and just use your clamp to hold it down. And bring that through, and then we just string across this way. Okay, now comes the final knot. This is for the very top, the head of the racket. I'm gonna do the knot function again here. Tension that so you can see just a little bit of give there. and use our clamp here. Take that off. And we're at 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Press right here. Or under, through. A little loop. And put this behind. So it gets a little tricky to do this kind of knot here. It's got it clamped in the way. Okay. Lock that table so it doesn't rotate on me. Towards, away, towards, and nice. And done. Cut this off. And that's it. Okay, now that the stringing is done, we'll just use our trusty string straightener just to make sure the string bed is straight. So just lock that table and then start off in the middle. Just kind of rock back and forth. And this is supposedly going to automatically straighten those strings. So back and forth along the mains, and we'll just put those crosses nice and straight for you. And after that's done, then we just have to release the racket. So I start off with these two outers and these two outers. And then finally these two. A couple turns should let it drop. There's the drop. There we go. Racket is strung. Thanks for watching.